So, a sister asked me, she said, can you talk about the idea of, is it okay for women to speak in front of men and teach them or lecture to them, right? Those who will say no will say, well, there's no precedent for that, right? Back in our countries, we never had that. We never had like a woman stand in front at the masjid and like lecture men or a mixed group, right? So that's a cultural context, and they're saying that can't be right because we didn't do it. Let's put that on the side. From the other's perspective, is there anything inherent in the Islamic law or the Sharia that says that a woman who has knowledge to give, right, and is observing the general etiquettes of the Sharia should not be addressing a mixed group or a group of men and women or a group of men? Is there anything inherent there? To my knowledge, no, there's nothing inherent that says you can't do that, right? And in fact, we know that people like Sayyidah Aisha, she was a scholar and she taught men. Now, min wara hijab, right? It was behind a curtain, but they heard her voice. She wasn't slipping the notes from underneath the curtain, right? When they say Sama'tu Aisha taqul, he's meaning I heard her say this. He heard her voice, and she spoke to them, right? And then they narrated that. And in fact, we would not know half of our deen if that interaction didn't happen. If we did not have women teaching in men, we would not know half of our deen, because the Prophet ﷺ said, خُذُوا نِصْفَ دِينَكُمْ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْحُمَيْرَةِ. Take half of your deen from this little red-cheeked or red-haired or humayra. They have different interpretation of what it means, but it's referring to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. So if we didn't allow that, we wouldn't know many of the things that deal with like personal status law of the Prophet ﷺ, the way he was with his wives, things at home that no one else, not even people like Abu Hurairah, who was with him almost 24/7, had access to. So from that perspective, yes, there's nothing wrong with it inherently. Should, however, this is the next question. We answered there's nothing wrong with inherently. Should we go and try to implement that tomorrow, such as that we have one of the knowledgeable sisters go in front of the Lakemba mosque group and stand in front of the, after Jummah or something, she's not giving Jummah, but after that, and she stands up and she starts giving a dars with the Jummah crowd there, right? I don't think Samir would be down with that right now. I wouldn't be down with that right now. Why? Because there's nothing wrong with it inherently, but is it appropriate right now? Are people ready for that, right? One of the things that the Sharia teaches us is an-nazar ila al-ma'alat, to look at the outcomes of things. Where is it going to lead us to, right? If the objective is just to create controversy, right, and get people riled up, go for it. That'll happen. However, if the objective is that this is a person of knowledge and we want her to be able to spread that, and she has something unique, then let's think about the context of how we can gradually introduce that and bring that in, right? There's a difference between the two. And you might say, well, that's not fair. Why is it we have to do it like that? If she has every right to do so and she should be doing so, then why can't we just jump in and do it, right? Well, the Sahaba in the Meccan period, they had every right to retaliate against their persecutors and their oppressors. But did they? They didn't, right? Were they quite ready for that? No, they were not, right? And it was only by the idhn, right? They were given the idhn, the permission, right? We still operate on that principle, that there's this thing of permission. In other words, they say that التيسير من علامات الإذن. If something is facilitated for you, then that's a sign there's permission to do it. If it's not yet facilitated for you, right, it's not going to work right now, slow down. Let's take it step by step, right? Let's introduce this thing in the best possible manner. Let's have a brainstorming session and think about, okay, what is the approach we can take, 1, 2, 3, how we can introduce that. Maybe it would be a joint panel first, right, and then slowly introduce the group to that. And then we have to question our intentions. Why are we doing that? Do we just want to stir the pot? Or is there something more noble behind that, right? So these things, right, are what I would say to be in tune to this Islamic ethos, where you consider others before you consider yourself, right? When you look at bringing about benefit to a society or a group, investigate and study and explore how you can go about doing that. Islam is not so black and white like everybody thinks, right? It doesn't tell you put your intellect on the side and just, we have kind of this blockhead approach to application of the Sunnah. Abadan. It doesn't tell you that. It tells you think, consider, right? Have priorities, right? When you have priorities, that means that certain things, if they're difficult to do now, look what's the higher priority. If there's a contradiction between two things and they're both priorities, well, you have to consider which one is a higher priority. And then we can move on. Then we can go from there. This means that we have to be better, right? We have to be more informed. We have to be more informed of our tradition. We have to know how it came about. We need to know what's الثوابت والمتغيرات. We need to know what is constant and is not going to change, and what is subject to local contextualization, right? And that takes ulama, that takes scholars. And nowadays, we have very few of those type of people. We have a lot of people talking, right? And a lot of people making claims, a lot of people having Twitter and Facebook accounts and saying all sorts of things. That does not equal knowledge, right? That's not in. That's just yapping away, talking heads. And unless someone is grounded in that, and enough of us become grounded in that, it'll be very difficult to take that approach. People will just be reactionary, right? People will just jump and react to things. And we know that reaction, or being reactionary, is definitely not from the Sunnah.